Welcome to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft, welcoming you to our live, local, 5 days a week TV, radio, and streaming show looking into all things Michigan. Today, I'll be talking to a number of people about a whole host of fun and interesting stuff, as well as important news stories right here in the state of Michigan. Let's get into today's headlines on our website, civiccentertv.com, on our local news page. Our top story today comes from the Detroit Free Press's Miriam Marini, as Michigan reported just under 16,000 new COVID-19 cases in the past week, as well as 83 deaths. The statewide average topped out at about 2,265 cases per day, and 83 deaths over the past week brings the state's total throughout the course of the pandemic to 2,786,213 deaths. Last week, Michigan had a test positivity rate of 20%. That's, again, of course, among those tests that are having their results reported back to the state of Michigan. That number could be more, it could be greater, that number could be lesser. We don't know for sure. What we do know is among the tests of which results were sent back to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services or local health departments, 20% of those tests in the past week came back positive. Also making headlines today on civiccentertv.com on our local news page from the Detroit News is Mike Martindale. An Oakland County Sheriff's probationary deputy has been relieved of their duties following preliminary investigations into suspected wrongdoing. The sheriff, Michael Bouchard, only released some details to the public following the announcement, stating that the probationary deputy had allegedly made some inappropriate comments online that were not within the sheriff's office's quote, Code of Professional Conduct, and closed quote. In a statement at a press conference yesterday, the sheriff said, quote, "He is no longer employed here. Let's be 100% clear. He has been relieved of duties. Our investigation is continuing, and we will pass it to the prosecutor's office for possible criminal application," and closed quote. Finally, making headlines today on civiccentertv.com's local news page from Bridge, Michigan's U. Stella U. The future of codifying abortion legality in Michigan may come down to a mere number of words. The state Supreme Court may decide on whether a ballot proposal for this November, intended for this November's election, will make its way to the polls this week, potentially, after the State Board of Canvassers recently ended their discussion on the matter in a deadlocked 2-2 tie on whether or not to place this particular proposal on the ballot. Opponents of the proposal have gone so far to call the language of it, quote unquote, garbled, arguing that previous typographical errors have kept other proposals off of the ballot, and that's the reason why this particular proposal should not make it to November's election ballot. Will that be the case with this abortion proposal? Time will tell. If it is going to be on the ballot, however, this November, that time is quickly running out, as absentee ballots are soon to be sent to those overseas and in the military for this November's gubernatorial election here in Michigan. All of those headlines are on our website today at civiccentertv.com/local-news, as well as those other helpful links to accurate and up-to-date information on COVID-19 from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, as well as the Oakland County Health Division. We have a great program ahead on this Wednesday edition of the Megacast. Coming up next, we'll talk to a filmmaker about Boblo Island, a Detroit Ferry Tale. That's up next on the Megacast.
Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Let's whoop it up for these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Fire Prevention Week is just around the corner. Join volunteer, part-time, and on-call firefighters at this year's Fire Open House. Catch up on your fire safety knowledge with live demonstrations and hands-on activities. Chat with local businesses and resources about fire prevention, see some familiar faces, fight future fires, and make some new friends. The West Bloomfield Fire Open House, October 2nd from noon to 3 p.m. at Fire Station 1 on Orchard Lake Road.
In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important. And now the same is true as we face the flu. Influenza has the potential to infect millions, putting lives and the healthcare system at risk. Fortunately, it's easy to protect yourself. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and with COVID-19 still spreading, it's essential. To see how you can hit this virus head-on, visit michigan.gov/flu.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily 1-hour TV, radio, and streaming show about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. You can learn more about the program by visiting civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find information on our entire network of stations, including My Michigan TV. For 85 years, Boblo Island was a beloved amusement park in the Detroit area, one of the first of its kind in all of America before it was finally shut down in 1993 and left to ruin. Now there's a documentary film coming out about Boblo Island, about the historic amusement park, to tell its story of glory and its story of ruin as well. Joining us now on the Megacast is Aaron Schillinger, the writer and director, as well as the editor of Boblo Boats, a Detroit Fairy Tale. Aaron, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate having you on. So, Boblo Island, a beloved amusement park in the Detroit area and really in the state of Michigan for a very long time, 85 years before it shut down in 1993. So, for you, why tell this story right now? What about right now made this the perfect time to go through the process of making a documentary about Boblo Island and telling its story not only to Detroiters, but to people all over the world?
Well, I first started the documentary in 2015, and the thing that drew me was I met a psychic who could talk to the boat. But the reason why I felt like it was really urgent to make the movie is because one of the two steamships, the St. Clair, one of the Boblo boats, was in desperate need to find a new dock location. So that was the first thing we were helping out in 2015, was to try to find a place to move the boat, because otherwise it was going to be scrapped. And then the other thing that really struck me as I began to research the film was the importance of Boblo Island in its civil rights history, which so many Michiganders didn't know. And now, we're living in an age where we're really honoring those Black stories. And so that's why it felt like a really relevant story to me.
So as you're putting this documentary together, you're keeping all of that in mind. What was your approach in terms of the storytelling? Because there's so many different angles to the Boblo Island story, the Boblo Boats story. What ultimately was your creative decision in terms of how you're going to tell this story of this historic landmark in the Detroit area?
You're absolutely right. There's a lot to fit into one 79-minute movie. So it's kind of, when people watch the movie, it'll be like a scattered potpourri history, as well as following the teams who are trying to save the boats. And so to kind of tie it all together, we worked with narrator Martha Reeves of Martha Reeves and the Vandellas to narrate the film. And we chose a unique perspective to write the narration. I decided to tell the story from the perspective of SS Columbia herself, the older of the two steamships, in order to give it that kind of poetic, magical spine to tie the story together. Because for so many generations of Detroiters and really people from all over the world who ended up having the opportunity to go to Boblo, it was always a magical place. And so I feel like having this magical narrator would give it that special feeling.
And there's so many pretty iconic figures too, beyond, of course, the Boblo boats themselves, individuals, humans as well. And you mentioned this a little bit earlier on, particularly from the civil rights angle of Boblo Island and how significant that was in Detroit's history. The film also in part tells the story of one of those civil rights pioneers, Sarah E. Ray, who was among the people that were forcing the integration of Boblo Island back in 1945. And that's way before integration of our schools across the U.S. was mandated by the federal government. So, why focus on her story in particular? What about Sarah E. Ray and the impact that she had on the Detroit area, on civil rights, and of course on Boblo Island made that an important element to put into the story, especially as you mentioned, you're trying to put so much information into 79 minutes and tell a compelling story with a lot of detail.
Yeah. So many people have fond memories of going to the park and the boats. They had their first kiss on the boat, they got married on the boat, dancing for an hour and a half up and down the river. It's Most people went there when they're kids and teenagers and they took their kids. But so many Detroiters do not know that the park used to be segregated. And so I feel like, in addition to honoring all those happy memories, we wanted to also tell people some things that they did not know about Boblo. And so in this instance, Sarah Elizabeth Ray forced the integration in 1945 after she got kicked off because she was Black. And after she got kicked off, she went straight to the NAACP, and working with them, the NAACP sued the Boblo Excursion Company, ultimately winning at the Supreme Court case where Thurgood Marshall was her lawyer. And this is like an astounding, important history that people don't know. So it was exciting and important to include it in the film.
The film will begin screening in the Metro Detroit area later on this month, September 15th through the 21st, Royal Oak, Rochester Hills, the Imagine Palladium in Birmingham as well. And then later on this month, the 23rd through the 29th in Woodhaven and in Saginaw as well in the state of Michigan. Also in other places throughout the Midwest region, including in Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana. We're joined by Aaron Schillinger, writer, director, and editor of Boblo Boats, a Detroit Fairy Tale, joining us on today's edition of the Megacast. You can find more information on Boblo Boats, a Detroit Fairy Tale by visiting bobloboatsfilm.com, bobloboatsfilm.com for more information. In terms of this story, how does it translate to some of the lessons that we're actively learning right now in our society, and kind of mirror or directly correlates to our past in Detroit?
Yeah, well, there's a Boblo Museum that's happening in Marine City right now. And it has lots of nostalgic items, including some props from the film. And I think the curator of the museum at the Mariner Theater, Laura Merchant, said it well when she said, we're living in a time of nostalgia right now, where people really want to go back and relive their past. So, everything from fashions from the 80s coming back to the music kind of changing. And then people just like wanting to see memes about Fago and, the good times. So the film plays into that, but it also is about reframing parts of that story to include the civil rights history that was left out, for decades, really, when people talk about Boblo Island. And there's actually another amusement park that the film goes into, Sugar Island, which was a formerly African-American amusement park that was just like an incredible story that our researcher found when we were making the film.
In terms of approaching Boblo Island's demise in the 90s and the way that it came to its close, knowing that it's been closed for almost 30 years at this point, and there's really nothing too much you can get in terms of where it's at right now. How did you go about then collecting what you needed to piece this film together beyond just the content element of it and the storytelling element of it, but those physical images that people can see of what Boblo Island was and also what it became as it was neglected later on?
So I took a lot of trips across the Ambassador Bridge and taking a car ferry from Amherstburg to Boblo to film what it looks like now, including, interviewing Canadians, because it is a Canadian island. And then as far as the archival, that historic footage, we reached out to a lot of people for their home movies. And then in addition to that, the Detroit Historical Society had digitized 35 millimeter footage of original cameras, original commercial footage that they had shot on the island over the course of the decades. And they digitized that footage at a really high resolution. And so we were able to include that in our film. And it's exciting because when they used to broadcast these old Boblo commercials, it was on like a small television screen, even though it was filmed on larger format cameras. And so now we finished the film in 4K. So now people will be able to watch that footage at a higher resolution than they've ever seen it before.
And be able to see it kind of from a whole different angle, some things maybe you missed in that nostalgia that will create some new nostalgia as well. We're joined by Aaron Schillinger. He is the writer, director, and editor of Boblo Boats, a Detroit Fairy Tale, joining us on the Megacast September 15th through the 21st here in Oakland County at Royal Oak, in Rochester Hills at the Imagine Palladium in Birmingham, and more. Also locations later on in the month in places like Woodhaven, Saginaw, and more other locations throughout the Midwest, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana as well. Again, more information as well as showtimes in your local area can be found on bobloboatsfilm.com, bobloboatsfilm.com for more information. So for you, what have you personally taken out of this story? What did you gain as a filmmaker or learn and taken on a human level from the story of Boblo Island, from the story of the Boblo Boats, and the impact that it's had on Metro Detroit and beyond?
Well, in addition to not even being from Michigan, the film has had a huge impact on my life because now I live in Ferndale, and I'm here to stay because I got married, and now I live in my wife's house. So the story has affected me personally, and it's also kind of taught me the importance of objects. You know, I was not really a boat guy before I made this movie, but watching the people who own the two Boblo boats now work so hard to try to restore them, and hearing all these happy memories that people have aboard these boats, I realized that sometimes physical objects themselves have a power that's greater than just the atoms that make them up. And so it's given me a real respect for history as well as historic preservation.
Well, Aaron, appreciate you joining us and telling us more about Boblo Boats, a Detroit Fairy Tale, and of course previewing the upcoming showings that will happen here in the Metro Detroit area and throughout the state of Michigan. Before we let you go, anything else people should know about Boblo Boats, a Detroit Fairy Tale?
Tyler, you've done a great job listing the website. I just want to let people know that there's still seats available for the special Q&A that we're having at the Royal Oak Imagine at 7:25. Jamon Jordan, the chief city historian, is going to be moderating a panel with me, some of another of the filmmakers and cast members from the film. And you can find tickets for that on the Imagine website or on our website, bobloboatsfilm.com. But it was great talking with you. Thanks so much for your excellent questions.
Appreciate having you on. bobloboatsfilm.com for more information and showtimes in your local area coming up in the next few weeks here in September. We'll take a break on the Megacast. When we come back, we'll talk about sports as we're getting ready for the Lions to kick off their regular season campaign this coming weekend against the Philadelphia Eagles, and as the college football season is well underway. That sound you're hearing is not a train in your background. It's the diesel. Matt Dery joins us next on the Megacast.
Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
Mark your calendars for the 11th annual Family Fun Night at West Bloomfield High School. Stop by on Friday, September 16th at 5 p.m. for an evening of free, fun activities as we honor our military, police, and fire heroes. Plus, stick around to see Laker football take on Clarkston at 7 p.m. To find out more, scan the QR code on your screen or visit wbsd.org/community/Family Fun Night.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily 1-hour TV, radio, and streaming show about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about the program, civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find information on our entire network of stations, including My Michigan TV. Joining us now is the host of the Locked On Lions podcast, which you can find on a number of different podcast outlets, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, and more. Matt Dery joins us now on the Megacast. Matt, thanks for being with us today.
What's going on, Tyler? Good to see you, buddy.
Hey, good to see you as well. So we're getting ready for the Lions season that kicks off this week Sunday against the Philadelphia Eagles, a tough week one matchup against a team that has also made some very vast improvements to their roster over the offseason, and a team that performed relatively well a year ago. This season, a lot of promise for the Lions, a lot of people looking at the team as one of those teams that can be a surprise this year, maybe not make the playoffs, but have a really good season ahead. For you, what are you looking at in terms of the outcome of this Lions season? Where do you think they end up when we get past week 17?
I mean, it's obvious. There's obvious improvements here. The roster, Tyler, is a lot better. We've been watching Hard Knocks every Tuesday night. The show's now over, but you see the culture that's been built. You see the positivity in the building. Heck, even the guys that get released and let go are walking out of the door telling Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell how great they are. It's a love fest. We're America's team now, Tyler. But the bottom line is there's still not enough talent here to win and win big. And that's okay. It's year 2 of a rebuild. Last year, they won 3 games. You asked me my expectations. I'm thinking 6 or 7. Obviously, in Vegas, they say 6.5 is sort of the over-under for those bettors out there. I see a 6 or 7 win team. I think the roster's improved. I like the offense a lot. I think Ben Johnson is the offensive coordinator with Dan Campbell and Jared Goff will be a nice combination. And I like the fact that the schedule's softer. Let's be honest. Last year's schedule was brutal, having to play the AFC North and the NFC West. So I think they get a little bit of reprieve there. And I don't see it as a playoff team yet. Still think there's some holes, but I think there's some positive momentum.
Yeah, I think if you can get out of the season with 6 wins, 6 to 8 wins is kind of where I have them on my low end, high end also. And if you get out of the season with that kind of a performance, you see some improvements from some of the younger guys coming up on this team. And if they stay healthy, is also going to be a big factor. I think that'll be a vast improvement for the Detroit Lions in the 2022 season. Another story with the Lions that is going to be getting a lot of focus this year is the future at the quarterback position. Jared Goff coming into a really make it or break it year, as many see it, and potentially could be let go this offseason if the Lions decide to move forward in a different direction. Some think that regardless of the way that Jared Goff plays in 2022, they should move on and go for whatever the biggest bang for their buck going forward. But that might be Jared Goff. Where do you stand on the Goff issue?
Well, obviously, the beginning of the season last year was a disaster. He did not look good. And it looked like the Jared Goff that Sean McVay and the Rams just discarded. Then the coaching changed with Anthony Lynn out. Ben Johnson was helping out, but really Dan Campbell was kind of the offensive coordinator, really. I mean, Lynn stayed on, but he didn't have any impact anymore. And he got better. And this narrative, Tyler, that they're going to move on from Goff after this year, I don't buy it. I think they feel that Jared Goff is going to be here and be here a while. Could they draft a quarterback next year in the first round? They've got 2 picks. Absolutely. But is an Anthony Richardson or a Will Levis going to come in here and take the job next year on a team that's trending upward? You still need to have a veteran QB and somebody that's viable. Putting a rookie in there that's never played at the NFL level, I think would be a mistake. So I don't agree that they're ready to move on from him. If he's god awful and terrible, yeah, they may have to pivot and go after and do kind of what Pittsburgh's doing with Trubisky and Pickett. That's possible. but I don't think he'll be awful. I think he'll be better than he was. The question is, in some of those tight games, late fourth quarter, can he deliver? And we're going to find out. He did obviously last year in the Arizona game, or the Minnesota game, I should say. But let's see. Let's see what they got. The wide receiver room is so much better. Run game's good. The O-line's good. So there's no excuses now. He should perform.
Yeah, I think that they're at a position where you have to make that decision. Where are you in the rebuild? Are you willing to take a step back and make a few steps forward down the road? Or is this the time where you're really trying to lean into ending this rebuild and finalizing that identity of Detroit Lions football under the leadership of Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell? I see them at the point where you want to make big improvements this year, and next year's that year, you're kind of going for it. Going back to a rookie quarterback doesn't accomplish that. If Jared Goff is even remotely like he was in the second half of last season, if not better than he was in the second half of last season, that's a much viable future asset than going after a quarterback in the first round and making them your immediate quarterback of the future. You can still get that quarterback. You can still trade up. You got 2 first-round picks. There's no reason to be rushing this in a way that could really derail that rebuild. In terms of the preseason, Matt, we saw some really interesting stories pop up, in particular, the performance of some of the rookies on the defensive side of the football. What we saw from Aiden Hutchinson, excellent in the preseason. It looks like that number 2 pick is going to be what we may see in the future and look back on as that was the right pick to make at number 2. Another surprise that came up this season, it's gotten a lot of press, particularly on Hard Knocks, is the performance of Malcolm Rodriguez. In terms of that linebacker room and really the coaching staff, how big of a surprise was Malcolm Rodriguez to the team coming into this preseason, given that he was a 6th-round pick?
I mean, I think that they thought he was a good football player, and that's why they drafted him. But yes, to be the best linebacker on the field during the preseason and even in training camp at times is a monster surprise. I mean, a lot of teams, Tyler, passed him up to the point where he went in the 6th round. You're asking a lot of an undersized kid here that was drafted in the 6th round to have to really come in and play a big role. But they're asking him. And when you look in that room and you see the likes of Jared Davis and Sean Dion Hamilton and some of those guys that got cut, obviously Davis brought back for the practice squad, but it's a weak point of the team right now. I mean, is Derek Barnes going to take a leap from last year? Hopefully. But again, he was a 5th-round pick. I think Brad Holmes believes you don't draft linebackers very high. You try to steal them in the mid to late rounds and hope they develop. And that's happened for some other teams, including when Holmes was in Los Angeles. So I think it's a surprise to a lot of people that don't recognize the name. I don't think it's a surprise to the organization. And also, it doesn't help that the room was sort of weak to begin with. But he's going to be good. I think he's going to be very good against the run. I think he's going to plug some holes. My concern with Rodrigo is guarding tight ends, big ones, down the field. Can he cover? There's a reason he slipped to the 6th round, and that is his pass coverage and his speed. So we're going to have to wait and see. But great story for sure. And those 44 jerseys, at least watching Hard Knocks last night, Rod Wood, esteemed team president, was getting some camera time saying that it's the 2nd most popular selling jersey. So we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, got that good Hard Knocks bump. Did Malcolm Rodriguez coming into his rookie season out of Oklahoma State. And we're joined by Matt Dery. He is the host of the Locked On Lions podcast, joining us today on the Megacast. You can listen to Locked On Lions on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, on Odyssey, and other places as well. Just go ahead and search Locked On Lions, and you'll be able to hear him regularly throughout the regular season and maybe more for this Lions team potentially this year. They really overachieve, Matt. Another area that was a problem area for the Lions and probably still is quite the problem area for the Lions is that backup quarterback position. I personally think it's kind of blown out of proportion. You're thinking about a lot of what ifs by saying that backup quarterback position could make or break this team this year. The fact of the matter is it's still a rebuilding team. If Jared Goff goes down or if Jared Goff underperforms, yeah, that's going to have a huge impact on the Detroit Lions. That being said, the backup quarterbacks this preseason were absolutely terrible. And bringing in Nate Sudfeld, what do you think that brings that's different than a guy like a David Blau or a Tim Boyle, given that they were objectively quite bad this preseason?
Yeah, they were bad. And I'm not one to bang the drum for Nate Sudfeld either. If Nate Sudfeld were any good, wouldn't he still be in Philly or Washington? Or, I mean, yeah, we have to talk about it because I really believe that Brad Holmes has done a nice job here in 2 years as general manager, but the backup quarterback situation has never been addressed properly. And they swung and missed on just about everything that they've tried. This is similar to last year's kicking situation, where in week one, it's like they went through five kickers already. David Blau was not good enough. Tim Boyle was a Holmes pickup, not good enough. And now Sudfeld's in. Then they want to bring Blau back on the practice squad, but Blau said, "The heck with you guys, I'm out of here," and goes to Minnesota. And then they bring Boyle back. I mean, it's a bizarre situation. Bottom line, if something happens to Jared Goff from an injury standpoint, um, they're in big trouble. That's just it. But if Patrick Mahomes gets hurt, the Chiefs are in big trouble. If Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, the Packers are in big trouble. I'm not putting Goff in that class, but you know what I'm talking about. I mean, there are maybe you can count on one hand some backup QBs that you'd be very comfortable with around the league, and that's about it. I mean, Jacoby Brissett is going to have to start for the Browns, and they're very concerned in Cleveland. So until Watson comes back, so I don't. I think I think it made for an interesting story on Hard Knocks. It's not, we watched the show last night. Tim Boyle took it well. Now he's back in the practice squad. Nobody wanted him on their practice squad. He lasted a few days on waivers and came back. But yeah, Goff's got to stay healthy, or if any of these other guys have to play, it's not going to be a good scene.
Yeah, and the positive in that is that the offensive line is one of this team's strong suits, if not their strongest position on the field this season. So that should play a big role in keeping their quarterback healthy. That protection is definitely going to be there. Matt, other big stories throughout the sports world in Michigan at this time. In Ann Arbor, another quarterback scenario there, much different than what we have in Allen Park with the Lions, the University of Michigan, and a bit of a quarterback controversy, even though they won't call it that. Jim Harbaugh won't call that a quarterback controversy. Cade McNamara getting the start against Colorado State. JJ McCarthy scheduled to start against Hawaii this weekend. Where do you stand on that issue, where they're at with their quarterback, their decision-making on whether or not to stick with the guy that won them a Big Ten championship a year ago, or go with the guy of the future, that five-star quarterback, the mobile quarterback, that's still a little bit green in JJ McCarthy?
I look at it as Cade McNamara is done. This is JJ McCarthy's show. This has been set up for JJ. JJ's the hotness, and the cult in Ann Arbor loves him. And he's not going anywhere. He's going to light up Hawaii this weekend. But Hawaii couldn't beat West Bloomfield. Hazel Park, Oak Park, any of them. This is going to be a bloodbath on Saturday in Ann Arbor, and JJ is going to he's going to be homecoming king. I mean, he's going to walk out of there. Cade McNamara may come in, but it doesn't matter. I look at it as this was set up this way, and it's very difficult to tell the guy that finally won you a Big Ten title last year to go kick rocks, but that's what it looks like. I mean, Cade McNamara did everything they asked him to do last year. Is he a superstar? No, but this has Brady Henson written all over it. And so to me, I think JJ's going to have a big game against a bad team Saturday, and then for week 3, it's his job, and let's see what he does with it. But I feel badly for Cade McNamara because I think this is a bit of a circus, to be honest. He didn't lose his job, and then people are going, well, he really struggled against Colorado State. It's the first game. He went 9 for 18. He wasn't great, but we're judging the quarterback battle based off the first game. And then JJ comes in garbage time, and of course he's going to light it up against Colorado State's third string defense. So I look at it as this is going to be his show from here on out, and it'll all be coronated on Saturday against Hawaii High School.
Yeah, I laughed hysterically when I saw the news come through a couple weeks back where Jim Harbaugh announced, we're going to make the decision after week 2. We're going to have Cade start week 1 against Colorado State and JJ start week 2 against Hawaii. It's pretty obvious at that point. You're setting JJ McCarthy up for success. You want him to be the quarterback of your future. And this is all fabricated so you don't lose another quality quarterback that could be a serviceable backup if J.J. McCarthy's youth comes into play and he underperforms during the season in critical points, or God forbid, there's an injury on your team, it was obvious. It's J.J.'s team, just as you said, and the performance this weekend against Hawaii, they might as well just not show up instead.
Let me say this, Tyler. Michigan's got a good team. All right. You may think I'm blasting Michigan, and I am to an extent because I think they've handled this very poorly. This situation, I feel sorry for Cade, but Michigan's got a really good team.
Yeah.
And so they're going to cruise through these first few games, not only because it's Cupcake City, but they're also really good. And that receiving core might be better than it was a year ago. But I just think for me, Cade McNamara did everything you asked him to do last year. He made big throws in big games, whether it was Ohio State, whether it was Penn State on the road, leading him down the field, finding Eric All on that crossing route. And I would stick with the guy that brought you to the dance last year and was named captain by his teammates. But I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, we'll really see that first kind of test will be against Maryland as they enter Big Ten play. But I agree, Michigan is going to be excellent this year. It's going to be a really tough get to beat Michigan in the Big Ten for teams like Ohio State, who will probably be the best set up to eventually potentially beat the University of Michigan, and of course for my Michigan State Spartans, especially at that at week one. Looks like it's going to be an uphill battle against the University of Michigan. Matt, appreciate you joining us today, and good luck on the season with Locked On Lions.
Tyler, thank you. Great to see you.
Good to see you as well. You can listen to Locked On Lions every week on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Odyssey, as well as many other podcast outlets. Go ahead and search Locked On Lions to find more information. We'll take a break on the Megacast. We'll come back more with interesting interviews and stories from across the Great Lakes State. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Let's whoop it up for these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Fire Prevention Week is just around the corner. Join volunteer, part-time, and on-call firefighters at this year's Fire Open House. Catch up on your fire safety knowledge with live demonstrations and hands-on activities. Chat with local businesses and resources about fire prevention, see some familiar faces, fight future fires, and make some new friends. The West Bloomfield Fire Open House, October 2nd from noon to 3 p.m. at Fire Station 1 on Orchard Lake Road.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily 1-hour TV, radio, and streaming show about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about the program by visiting civiccentertv.com/Megacast, where you'll find info on our entire network of stations. That includes My Michigan TV with a free app for your smartphones and your smart TVs. Go to your app store and search My Michigan TV to learn more and watch us and our other original programming from My Michigan TV for free, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Joining us now on the Megacast is Dave Dulio. He is a professor of political science and the director of Oakland University's Center for Civic Engagement. Back with us again on the Megacast. Dave, thanks for being with us today.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Tyler. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you as well. And it is, again, a very busy political season as we're approaching the November election, and it's really picked up quite a lot in the last couple of weeks. A big story right now that's making news this week is whether or not the ballot proposal to codify the legality of abortion in the state of Michigan will actually make its way to the November ballot. The State Board of Canvassers recently had a decision on that proposal and putting that on the November ballot. That ended in a deadlock 2-2 tie. And now it looks like the Michigan State Supreme Court is going to be the one that will ultimately make that decision. Time is ticking on that. Just how close are we from seeing that ballot proposal that had quite a lot of momentum, not making it onto the ballot this November.
We're really close. As I understand it, the deadline to finalize ballot language is Friday. So we've got less than 2 days at this point, for all intents and purposes. And I think it's worth noting for the viewers and listeners out there that the State Board of Canvassers is usually an unknown entity that doesn't have much fanfare around it. It actually dates back to the Michigan Constitution that was codified in 1850. So it's been around for a long time, but really, I would say prior to 2016, not a whole lot of people knew that it existed or what it did, and it's set up with 2 Republican nominees and 2 Democrat nominees. Kind of sets it up to fail in instances like this, where it needs a majority, a 3-to-1 vote, to move something forward. So it is. I think it's likely that in the future you see more 2-to-2 ties on some controversial stuff that could go on the ballot or would need to be ratified or approved of by the canvassers.
And that's where the sense of urgency is really coming from, Dave, because on both sides of the aisle, both the Democrats and their pro-abortion angle and the anti-abortion angle from the Republican side, they both are really putting the pedal to the metal on addressing this issue immediately, with Republicans hoping to obviously run out the clock on this and keep it off the ballot or have it be rejected for legitimate reasons or reasons that have rejected previous ballots in the past. And the Democrats really pushing for, this is a critical issue in this election. It's affecting politics not only here in the state of Michigan, but really the general political realm across the United States. In terms of the issues with this ballot proposal that could keep it off of the November election ballot, the primary one that's being argued from the opposition side is that the language is kind of messed up, or there's a lot of errors in this. How common is it for ballot proposals, at least in the past, to have been rejected or not put onto the ballot because of these sort of typographical errors or unclear language?
Not very common. Usually, right, this is a routine thing that where it's I hate to use this phrase, but it's the one that comes to mind, right? In the past, the State Board of Canvassers has generally been a rubber stamp, right? Because there's little controversy surrounding what they're going to do, and we go back to 2016 when or 2020 actually, with the presidential race, where there was one member of the board who abstained from voting. That really, and there were questions swirling about whether or not the board was going to certify the election. And after that, we really start to see more attention on the board and more investigation of things like this, like how often and how rare is a certain action.
And the fact of the matter is that the time is really running out. The court may have to rule, if at all, before Friday of this week, September 9th. That's the statutory deadline for state canvassers to certify all qualified ballot measures for the November election. And soon after that is when ballots start to be sent out to those internationally and in the military. That will certainly affect this November's election. We're joined by Dave Dulio. He is the director of the Center for Civic Engagement, as well as a professor of political science at Oakland University, with us on today's edition of the Megacast. Another issue coming up this fall that may be quite unique to elections we've seen in the past, or at least key candidate positions may see fewer debates or no debates at all. We've already heard in the past few weeks, there's been some arguments between the Whitmer campaign and the Tudor-Dixon campaign about how many of these debates they may have and when these may happen. Now, we also heard recently from Attorney General Dana Nessel that she says she will not debate Republican candidate Matthew DePerno, as he is, quote, not a serious candidate. How can this debate issue, whether they happen or not, how could this potentially affect the outcome of the election for both sides of the aisle?
Sure. I think that the way the debates are handled in Michigan currently is that everything's in the hands of the candidates. And because of that, they're each going to do or want to do what's best for them, right? So let's take the governor's race, for instance. Tudor Dixon is at a huge funding disadvantage relative to Gretchen Whitmer. Absentee ballots go out 24th of this month. She would like to have a debate prior to that day so that she can take advantage of the earned media that would come with a debate, that her campaign wouldn't have to pay for anything for voters to see her in action going up against Gretchen Whitmer one-on-one for an hour, right? That is invaluable time for a campaign like a challenger to a sitting governor. Gretchen Whitmer, on the other hand, wants to delay it as much as possible. She doesn't need to debate from her perspective, right? She is coming at this from a probably a point of power and an advantage, really. The Detroit News had a poll out earlier that just in the last day or so that's got Whitmer up 13 points over Dixon. So the Whitmer campaign looks at that and says, why should we even give her a chance? Why should we even, put her on the same stage? So it's really a self-interested dance that they're all doing.
We're joined by Dave Dulio, professor of political science at Oakland University, joining us on today's edition of the Megacast. He's also the director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University as well. Another big story, controversial story on the federal political level is the raid on Mar-a-Lago that found a bunch of classified documents on Trump's property in Mar-a-Lago. How does this impact 2024 in particular, Donald Trump's potential run for president again, trying to pull off what I refer to as the old Grover Cleveland?
For now, the only president to serve 2 terms non-consecutively, of course, right?
Correct.
Right now, it helps Donald Trump. He has seen his poll numbers with Republicans go up since that raid at Mar-a-Lago. It makes him it puts him in a stronger position. You even see some of his rivals or potential rivals coming to his defense, or at least backing him on his claims of overzealous law enforcement. Somebody like Ron DeSantis, who could be a real thorn in the side to President Trump in 2024, has been supportive. So I think that right now, it A, makes it more likely that Trump runs again, and B, strengthens his grasp on that potential nomination.
And in terms of the ongoing cases against him at state levels and also potentially federally as a result of the Select Committee on January 6th, that could also play a role in that too, as an additional bit of firepower for the opposition to Donald Trump going forward, and potentially setting up for him maybe not legally being allowed to run for office. How likely do you think that outcome is, that he may want to run for office, but ultimately this could end up with him not being legally allowed to do so?
Never say never, right? I mean, there's so much that's yet to play out with this one sort of vein of national politics, right? And we really have to see how things shake out in the courts before we can even attempt to start to handicap it or say what's likely or what's not.
Joined by Dave Dulio. He is a professor of political science and the director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University, joining us on today's edition of the Megacast. More information can be found on the Center for Civic Engagement at oakland.edu/CCE. That's oakland.edu/CCE. Dave, at this time, as we're approaching November, any upcoming activities or discussions with the Center for Civic Engagement that you'd like to preview?
Yeah, Tyler, thanks for the time to do that. We're gonna start our office hours series again, and we've talked about that over the last couple of years, where we highlight faculty experts here at Oakland University. It's a it's a chat basically that I have with one or two faculty experts from campus. Tomorrow is our first one where we are going to talk with two economists about the state of the economy in Michigan and the U.S. We'll talk about issues of inflation, gas prices, whether or not we are in a recession, what the forecasts might be. And of course, we'll loop that back into how that's all affecting the 2022 campaign, both here in Michigan and across the country. We're going to do 3 additional office hours sessions, one on October 6th about sustainability, and then 2 election-related ones in November, one to preview the election on November 3rd, and one to recap the election on November 9th. The first 3 of these are going to be offered in a hybrid manner where folks can come to campus if they like and join us in the Oakland Center. It's the main student union building on campus. Or they can join via Zoom. Folks can register for that by going to oakland.edu/CCE. And then in October, we're going to have a Lincoln Douglas style debate about the issue of abortion with 2 nationally known, nationally respected thinkers on this issue. One is her name is Jill Filipovic. She's a CNN contributor. She's written for the New York Times, Washington Post, Huffington Post, you name it. And the other is Alexandra DeSantis, who is a writer at National Review. They come at this issue from different perspectives. Importantly, however, what we're doing this because we want to talk about it in the right way, right? So we're not going to change anybody's mind. We don't want to change anybody's mind. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to offer information, right? And to demonstrate that even when 2 people disagree about an issue, even like abortion, they can do it in a way that is civil and respectful and productive, right? And one thing we know is that when people have an idea of where somebody who they disagree with is coming from on a particular issue, they're more likely to respect that person's opinion, more likely to tolerate that person's opinion, rather than thinking they are the devil. So what we want to do is have this to demonstrate and model civil behavior, civil tone, even around an issue like abortion, right? So it's that'll be on October 11th. It's a virtual event, and maybe we can come back and talk more about that closer to the date.
Absolutely, Dave. Appreciate you joining us. You can participate in the conversation and join in on all the other events at oakland.edu/CCE. That does it for today's edition of the Megacast. We'll return on Thursday with a new program in the morning.